Hello there, everybody. Welcome along to EFL Debate. This is a series of summer deep dives across the EFL over the next month. We've already had a few episodes already on different clubs, so hope you can go out there and check those out. But this one is on Bolton Wanderers, and I'm delighted to be joined by Bolton fan Colin from the Fanzone podcast. Colin, thanks so much for coming on the show. How are you, mate?
Pleasure. Yeah, I'm all good, thank you. How are you? How are you? Are you getting on all right?
Yeah, I'm great, thanks. Always looking forward to these. So let's sort of dive straight into it. Really, it feels incredible to me, Carl, to think that only one full calendar year has passed since Bolton Wanderers were sitting 19th in League Two, because it feels like almost a completely different world away. But I suppose that shows the size of the progress that Sharon Britton and Ian Evatt have overseen. So, if you can sort of in one answer just summarise for me what's been behind this progress from Bolton Wanderers and how you've been able to do what you've done over the last couple of years.
I think, well, the first word that comes to mind is stability, and obviously that's been installed by the hierarchy, and they've kind of, other than the odd one or two tiny mistakes, you might say, have made really good decisions, be it at board level or be it on the football side of things, and that's obviously resulted in us performing on the pitch. When initially Sharon Britton brought in our initial manager, be it Keith Hill, I think it was a necessary kind of rushed type of situation, because we were kind of like having what we've been through and stuff. They kind of like need to get somebody in, and it just didn't quite work out, and kind of sticking a plaster over it for the time being. But obviously since Ian Evatt's come in, it's been an upward trajectory, which has been good.
Yeah, of course. What do you think? You've mentioned that the stability that Sharon Britton has provided. Can you put a bit more sort of meat on the bones in terms of that? Has it been a case of transparency that she's provided, leadership, filling really important off-field roles, and sort of structural areas of the club that maybe had been neglected a little bit under the previous regime?
Yeah, I think it's definitely. Kind of the structure and the appointment of the correct people in the correct roles. But I think what she's done is kind of, see, with Bolton, we've got such a big loyal fan base, and what's really important for a club of our stature is to get that fan base on board. And there aren't many people, if anybody really, I would have thought, that has a kind of a bad word to say about her. So I think the first thing she did is tried to tie the community into the football club and the wider community as well. Obviously, people who ordinarily don't live in Bolton and stuff who go to the games and keep coming back. And that's been reflected in not only the cost of the season tickets that they've provided us with, but also the fact that the fans are keeping coming back. Because I think even if the prices aren't as competitive as they are, the likelihood is that a lot of Bolton fans would return, because you feel a connection with the club again, which is obviously really important.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think those sorts of things, especially in areas or parts of the local area that maybe aren't that economically well off, it's great that the club has been able to offer fans opportunities to watch live local football at affordable prices, which is something that we're definitely missing at the top of the game. So
yeah, I think one thing that they do very well actually in recent years is start the sale of season tickets very early on. So they tend to go on sale around March, April for the next season, if that makes sense. So it gives people enough time to kind of sign up and like be ready for that season from a financial point of view, and obviously budget for it and all that type of stuff. So it kind of works quite well, really.
Yeah, absolutely. In terms of recruitment as well, the club's obviously done very well in recent years. In that perspective, naturally based on the success you've had, certainly in the loan market last season, which we'll come on to. How much credit does Ian Evatt take in that, do you suppose? And how much credit does the recruitment team take?
Yeah, I think that's massive. We've got one of the more valuable assets, or an asset that the club has, is Chris Markham, who's done a lot of good work at at England level, but also with Huddersfield on the recruitment side of things as well. And he seems to kind of there's good relationship between him and Ian Evatt and the rest of the kind of staff. And the recruitment has been pretty much on point. What they do tend to do is recruit in January for the following season, if that makes sense. And we kind of noticed that with some of the signings that we've made in the last 12 months. What I mean by that is Carl Dempsey, for example, he was signed in the January of last season, but he came good this season, if that makes sense. And sure. I think you probably will see something similar with Victor Adebayo, and they kind of feel, the old saying, failure to prepare to fail type situation.
Succession planning almost a little bit.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. So the recruitment team has to have a big tap on the back, really.
Yeah, absolutely. Well done to Chris Martin and Chris Markham and the team.
Yeah,
Markham. There we go.
I'll get that right as well, because I think he's pretty active on social media, so he might even be watching this at some point.
Okay, well, hi Chris, I'm glad we established your name the second time. Let's talk about Ian Evatt, because I think it's fair to say that the sort of almost borderline untouchable legendary status that Ian Evatt has now. Maybe legend is a bit too strong a word, but it's certainly a huge connection between Ian Evatt and Bolton Wanderers. That hasn't always been there. Things started a bit rockily. Now, I'm not naive enough to suggest that the results and the changing of the results from January 2021 has had anything other than a massive factor behind that. But how do you think the relationship between Ian Evatt and Trotters fans has kind of evolved over the last 3 years?
I think when you look at when he first came in, obviously, like I said to you before, we were still in that kind of new ownership, kind of feeling our way through kind of what was going on. And obviously when he got appointed, there was a lot of optimism because he'd done such a good job at Barrow previously. Obviously, it was during the COVID, the pandemic as well. I think that kind of kicked in when he was kind of finding his feet, and the results were a little bit hit and miss. And because the crowds have been so good, and the fact that the support is back on side with the ownership group, the likelihood is that there would have been a probably fullish stadium when he was kind of hitting the rocks. And there's quite a bit of a general consensus across the fan base that if he had been in position, if the fans had been in the stadium whilst they were in position so early doors, it could have turned a little bit sour. So I think he's counted his blessings himself actually with that one, to be honest with you, because that's a natural thing for a football club, and the pressure that mounts from being inside a 25,000 or whatever seat stadium and stuff. It's big pressure, but yeah, he kind of got away with that. But yeah, he's done a fantastic job, and all we want really as a fan base is to see year-on-year progression, which is obviously what we're seeing at the moment.
Certainly is.
Yeah, and there's still an expectation there for a lot of Bolton fans. Obviously, the younger generation, your early 20s or late teens to early 20s, kind of don't know us of any decent, any expectations on us. But certainly, like the mid-20s up, there's still an expectation on that we should be beating a lot of the clubs at the level we're at. So that comes with its own pressures. And he's certainly dealing with them pressures.
Yeah, absolutely. I suppose that's an interesting thing as well, because when you've had a series of problems, which would probably need about 5 podcasts to really go into what led to the downfall of Bolton Wanderers, and I feel like that's kind of covered territory, so we won't go too much into that. But
I don't want to be reminded, Gabe, to be honest.
Don't want to be reminded, yeah, exactly. Well, exactly. So we'll give that a swerve. But let's just say there were lots of valid reasons why the club hit rock bottom and it needed a complete reboot. But I even think logically, even if that was true, there's probably still a demographic that sort of remember Bolton Wanderers playing in Europe, that remember them being such a permanent fixture in the top flight, remember them beating Arsenal so often under Sam Allardyce. And I suppose it's that logic versus emotion, I suppose. So that's been a difficult thing for Ian Evatt to handle possibly at times as well.
Yeah, I'd say so. Yeah, but he's often the thing. What he does very well, he refers back to it, and he discusses kind of what the club is within the structure of English football and the history that it's got, and the successes that it's had in the past. And he kind of plays on that, which is pretty good, really, quite intelligent, because he's got a direction in which he wants to go, and he wants us to obviously be on that journey with him, and he wants to be part of it.
In what way does he play on it, do you think?
Say that again, sorry.
In what way does he play on it, do you think?
Well, he talks about the fan base. He talks about, the past. And he don't mean, don't get wrong, he don't go into it in any form of detail, but I have heard him several occasions pay reference to the fan base and the expectation levels and whatnot. And obviously he's alluding to the not so distant past, I guess.
And he's very ambitious himself as well, which is the big thing that stands out to me. Like when Bolton Wanderers came up from League Two, he was straight on the thing of we want to try and get promoted again. So, I mean, I suppose I've phrased that previous question about sort of managing expectation, but perhaps there's actually no greater expectation than the expectation Ian Evatt puts on himself.
Yeah, exactly that. Yeah, it's he is ambitious, and at the end of the day, if you're not ambitious, then really you shouldn't be in the game. I think he's paid reference to the fact that he doesn't really want to be a manager for a ridiculous amount of time, like a Roy Hodgson or whatever else. I think he wants to do a solid job with us and maybe look to move on or take us as far as he thinks he can take us. And even Sharon Brayton's come out recently and said that she has the vision of us going all the way from League Two back into the Premier League. And I mean, I don't know what level of investment that they've got lined up for us to be able to achieve them goals, but there must be something in it.
Well, I mean, you say that, Cole, but I think the championships sort of had a weird period where the top 2, 3, 4 spots have been sort of taken by clubs that have had parachute payments, and it can be difficult to get automatic promotion from the championship. But we've seen clubs, well, first of all, your really smart clubs like Brentford and Luton being able to get into the Premier League within I think, between 4 and 6 years after coming up from League One. We've seen clubs like Barnsley and Huddersfield in recent years get into the playoffs in the Championship, because I think the playoffs in the Championship has actually been quite a low bar. And I realise this is a little bit off topic from where Bolton Wanderers are at the moment, but I don't.
Well, it's relevant though, because like I say, that's what we want to try and get back to, type of thing. So it's definitely relevant.
I think you've got to be realistic as well and say it's a long-term strategy that you want to move towards. But I think it's great the sort of personnel that you've got in place and the running of the club, and I think you've got a really good CEO as well. So the structural side of things all seems to be in place. So and with the size of the club and what it's done before and its history in English football, I think there's certainly a lot of optimism for what the future holds. The challenge ahead now, the first one would be replacing the loanees. Obviously, James Trafford from Manchester City and Conor Bradley from Liverpool. I mean, they're going to be some shoes to fill, aren't they?
They are, but footballers are replaceable. I think you can get a little bit hung up on the fact that they will be irreplaceable. I don't think that's true. I think you are right. They are going to be big shoes to fill, but I mean, providing the recruitment's right, and I think that the club has kind of promised Ian Evatt that there will be some money to spend, and he invests that money in the right area. Of course, that's the goalkeeper, because we need 2 goalkeepers now because we've released the other one, and obviously Traff's gone back to City. Providing we get that right, then there's no reason why we can't. I mean, they said, referring to the fullback and Conor Bradley, previously we had Marlon Fossey, and a lot of Bolton fans were waxing lyrical over the fact that he weren't coming back, and we were never going to replace him. And then,
can Conor Bradley replace Marlon Fossey? That was the conversation we were having last summer, wasn't it? So.
Exactly, and that's it's easily done if its recruitment's done correctly. I have every confidence that the players that come in to replace the 2 young lads will be perfectly adequate.
How do you feel the squad's shaping up at the moment then, Colin? How far off is this current squad from the one that will kick off in August?
I think it's a good distance away, Gabe, to be honest with you. I think we probably need 7 or 8 players, I think, realistically. We need a little bit more kind of experience and a bit more know-how at this level. Linked with Ollie Norwood, for example.
Blimey, Ollie Norwood, Sheffield United.
Sorry,
Norburn.
Peterborough. Norburn.
Oh, Ollie Norburn. Yeah, that's the one. Oh, okay, yeah, that makes more sense.
I'm gonna look stupid now on this. It's an
Ollie Nor. I mean, I'll give you some leeway with that one, Carl.
Exactly, yeah. But yeah, I've seen him play for Peterborough. I think he was at Shrewsbury before that, if I'm thinking of the right midfielder.
Yes, he was at Shrewsbury, yes. That's correct.
So he was quite impressive. And I think he'd give us that little bit of steel, but obviously give us that kind of drive going forward as well. I think we need in midfield. Obviously, we need a fullback that we've discussed, and is it Dabo from Coventry? I think
Dabo, yeah.
Yeah, I think that's quite far down the discussion line in terms of potential contracts, so that'll be a good signing.
Dabo is an interesting one, actually, Cole, because I don't think he would necessarily expect to be as explosive as Connor Bradley. And what I reckon, if you brought in Dabo, first of all, he's a very reliable operator, good link-up play, solid defensively, experienced. But I would maybe say that if you brought in Dabo, you'd want your outside centre-back to be more of an overlapping type. Now, we saw Ewan Toll to do that really well at times last season. I don't know how well he's coming on with the injury that ended his 22.
Well, he came back for the playoffs, and then he went away on international duty with Northern Ireland, and he's picked up another injury. I think it might be a reoccurrence of that. So I think he's going to be out for a few weeks. I think nothing drastic, but yeah, interesting. I don't really know too much about the lad from Coventry, to be honest with you, in terms of his style of play. But Owen Toll isn't really. He does offer that, but yeah, I understand.
He's good on the ball, isn't he? He's pretty technical.
Yeah, he's technical, but I think he's still improving his game and he's still learning the game as well in England. And so is that a lot of expectation on him to be able to push forward and perform? Probably, yeah. But I guess George Johnson offers something similar on the left-hand side as well. So you're probably right with that assessment, actually.
Yeah, I think what I would say, you need either a super athletic right wing back that can get from one end of the pitch to the other really quickly, like Connor Bradley did extremely well, or you need someone that's a bit more of a solid, reliable type that can maybe dovetail with a really athletic right-sided centre-back that can sort of hit it on the overlap. So from what you're saying, maybe there's a little bit of fine-tuning there in terms of finding that balance between the right wing-back and the right centre-back so that you've got the right range of qualities between them.
Yeah, but I think it wouldn't surprise me if Randall Williams was to play right wing-back from time to time next season as well, because I think he was used in that position for Exeter, I think, if I remember correctly. And he did play 1 or 2 games towards the end of the season. He looked pretty accomplished in the right wing back position, so that could be an option as well. But I do feel we're not a mile away.
I would say, though, I can't see Randall Williams starting the season as first choice. Perhaps I'm wrong if he has a great pre-season, but I wouldn't.
Back up on either the left side or the right side as well, I guess, because he gives you that versatility, doesn't he?
Yeah.
But in terms of signings, I do think we're not a mile away, but we're a distance away from being the finished article, and I think there'll be quite a bit of activity on the transfer side of stuff.
I'm terribly sorry. There's been a house alarm that's gone off. It sometimes does that. Just give me 10 seconds.
Yeah, you're all right.
Oh, there we go. Not normally used to having that, but we got there in the end. Talk to me about where Bolton are in terms of defensive options generally then, Carl.
Yeah, so obviously if you go from left to right, you've got Declan John, left wing back, with Jack Idale, who will be obviously back for next season, who missed the percentage of last. George Johnson, a left-sided centre-half. Ricardo Santos, centre-half. Owen Toll, right-sided centre-half. And then, here come the gaps, in all honesty. We are missing on that right side, I think, now. But obviously you've got Randall Williams, who we've just discussed, who can play left back and right back. So yeah, that's a, you know, I think we probably need another centre half and of course 2 goalkeepers and a right wing back. So that's kind of the areas in which we need to improve from a defensive point of view. But it's tricky because, you know, we had such a good record defensively last season, so you don't want to kind of disrupt that. But how much of that was the goalkeeper making the saves he made? But only time will tell.
On Randall Williams, do you think that you've mentioned his versatility and the fact that he can play on either side, which I think is a great strength? Do you think it's possible that you can also use his versatility to flip from a 3-4-1-2, which has been Ian Everett's favoured formation previously, to maybe the 4-2-3-1 we saw in the second half of the League Two promotion winning season? Because he can play on the wing either, and I think he could also fit into a 4-2-3-1 if you maybe moved the outside centre back into a fullback position.
I can't see Everett moving away from his formation that he finished towards the end of last season, to be honest. I think he'll just advance on that. If that was the case, and he was thinking of so much fluidity with his formations, then we could have probably tried to keep hold of Dapo and wouldn't have let Kieran Sadler go on loan as well, because obviously they are wingers per se, aren't they? And obviously them two deteriorated and kind of moved away from the club. So I can only see him going one way and sticking with the formation that he had towards the end of last season. And to be honest with you, Gabe, I think he'll just strengthen on that. If not, if I'm honest.
Yeah, and that makes.
Sorry to interrupt you. I question the in-game versatility of teams at our level from a tactical point of view. I don't think they're able to switch, certainly in-game, as well as the teams and the players at the higher divisions, because it often screams out for that switch in formation that, you know, you see it in the Premier League and the Championship as well, and it never seems to materialise. I don't know whether that's whether they're able to do it in game. I'm not sure, or all of the players. I'm sure some of them have that ability to change so drastically, but. Yeah, I often question that, to be honest.
Yeah, I think it's a fair point. And to be honest, I'm quite often sitting here saying I want managers to sort of introduce and maintain a clear style of play and a clear identity. So I don't want to go too hard on Everett for not changing formation.
He's certainly got a clear identity, and he's very much a B-Tech version of Manchester City. Just without the world-class players. But he plays a very similar style and obviously very much keep ball and grinding and wearing teams down and obviously looking for that killer ball and often find it in the last 15, 20 minutes of games.
Yeah, and that's such an important thing in football, because I was just speaking to a Stoke City fan a couple of hours ago on a different Summer Deep Dives podcast about the fact that they've struggled to find an identity for so long, and I think that can be a real problem sometimes, because you end up investing in players that don't fit into what you're trying to do, and I think the fit in football is so important. In terms of Ricardo Santos, then, Cole, are you confident that he can stay fit next year? Because when he does, he's such an important player for Wanderers, isn't he?
Yeah, I think he'll be an ever-present next season. I think I'll be surprised if he doesn't take his game onto the next level, because I think there's going to be more expectation on the club to finish higher up the division, and obviously he's an integral part of that, being the captain and the leader in the dressing room, and he's just come on year on year. I think the only reason why he obviously missed parts of last season because he got a kind of a form of pneumonia around Christmas time and missed, I think, 6 to 8 weeks, I think it was. But obviously you'd hope that he's not going to get pneumonia again. And generally speaking,
it's a bit of a niche illness, isn't it?
Yeah. And he's pretty, I think, touch wood, when I have actually got a wooden table here, that he doesn't.
I'm glad it was a table.
Yeah, he is, yeah. Yeah. Is it before 9 o'clock? So hopefully, touch wood, he stays fit. So prominent figure and such a vital player for us.
Yeah, absolutely. And do you know, I'm going to credit Alex from Burnden Aces actually, or Burnden Way, because I think midway through the 2021 promotion season, where Bolton were struggling as a collective, he was saying then that Ricardo Santos is just a really incredible defender. So I think you know, it's always been clear that what he's capable of as an individual, and now he's part of a real team around him. Which kind of brings me on to Aaron Morley, because I've been so impressed with his development over the last 12 months.
Yeah. There's not really many bad things you can say about the lad, to be honest. I think he did tail off a little bit towards the back end of last season. I think he played a lot of games. That there was again, goes back to what I said before, we need more strength and depth. There was an expectation on him to play regular football and perform regularly. Because obviously he's been so impressive since we signed him from Rochdale. He very much reminds me of bloody hell, probably shouldn't say this, but he very much reminds me of Paul Scholes in the way he plays. He always seems to have time on the ball, and he's got such a good eye for a pass. Obviously, he's nowhere near and probably never will be at the level that Paul Scholes were.
No, don't worry. I'm not sitting here thinking you're mad, Carl, because I've seen Aaron Morley's passing myself, and I know exactly what you mean. And I know you're not trying to compare him directly to Paul Scholes or anything like that. Of course we're not. But I've seen him where it's like he's just got this range of things he can do, where it's like he has this skill where he can have a studded roller, where it's like it's just he uses kind of the bottom of his foot to try and sort of caress the ball, and he's just got all these different sort of techniques that he's able to do.
I think he's in the right team though, Gabe, to be honest. I think it helps him in the way that we play and how he's expected to pick the ball up off the back three or the back five and dictate play. Obviously, if he's playing in a different team who hasn't got that type of expectation on that type of player, then his skill set probably wouldn't shine as much as it does. So it's a good fit for him as a footballer.
Yeah, absolutely. Although I must say I'm actually a little bit surprised that I expect him to develop, don't get me wrong, because I've known technically he can be anything he wants. Like, I think he's Premier League level sort of technically, and I've always felt that. I'm a little bit surprised still at the speed of development, especially under someone who is as driven and ambitious as Ian Evatt, because I remember watching him for Rochdale in the 21-22 season. I was sitting quite close to him actually, and it was they beat Sutton United 3-2, and there was a period of that game, I think it was a time when Sutton had 10 men, where he was absolutely calling the shots and his passing was just absolutely unreal. And then there was this mad 10-minute spell, I might have said this to you before, where Sutton they brought on the target man, all of a sudden the ball stuck to them, and then they were very aggressive. And that period of the game, Aaron Morley looked a little bit flummoxed. He looked a little bit lost, a little bit sort of like rabbit in the headlights type thing. And I wondered whether he would be able to adjust to the intensity, perhaps the way somebody like Ian Evatt works. And I've actually feel like it's a feather in Ian Evatt's cap, really, that he's been able to turn Aaron Morley from what I would have called at the time a luxury player into a complete midfield package.
Yeah, I think he needs to, for him to be a complete midfield package, I do think he needs to add more goals to his game. And he has such an ability to be able, for example, the goal he scored away at Charlton, and I'm sure you remember and see it. He's on Sky, I think it's back from about 30-yard free kick. So he has the ability to be able to score from distance. And I think he does need to shoot a little bit more. But he has got the ability to be able to, I think he's one of these midfielders that he's playing at League One, but he'd probably be better if he played in the Championship, if that makes sense.
Okay.
Well, yeah, because I think you've just explained often in game when you're playing against an aggressive team who tend to go direct, he can be a little bit lost. And it happened last season against certain teams. He can, that rough and tumble, he's not kind of got that about his game. Whereas obviously if you play at the higher level, you have a little bit less of that, don't you? And I think he could probably grow as a footballer even more if he played with us, hopefully, in the Championship.
Yeah, no, that's an interesting point. I mean, I don't want to sort of underestimate the difference in terms of demands at championship level in
Of
terms of.
course.
Say again?
No, of course, I understand that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm just trying to make the point that the game ordinarily, when you're playing in the championship and obviously the higher end of that division, it's kind of played, how football should be played, and use the inverted commas.
Yeah, absolutely. You mentioned, I think we touched on it earlier, where Bolton Wanderers, one thing they've tried to do, and in many cases very successfully done, is recruit before they've needed to recruit, where it's like you plan for making signings this season for next season type of thing, so that you've got players sort of bubbling under. Sorry, go on.
Yeah, I feel they do that. Yeah, I think there's evidence to suggest that's the way that we go about things.
Yeah, and I just wonder how much of this summer's recruitment is going to be those developmental signings where they might not necessarily, they won't have to hit the ground running in 23-24, but they could really step up when called upon the following season. How much of it is going to be those kind of signings as opposed to signings like goalkeeper and right wing back, where you're asking them to make an impact in the here and now?
Yeah, that approach that I'm referring to has been the approach during the January transfer. I probably need to stress that.
Okay.
I think the recruitment is or has been sort of an area in which obviously they need to. I was going to give them credit to say that it's been good, but it's not. Summer recruitment hasn't probably been the best, actually, thinking about it. So that is definitely this summer. It's such a critical summer, this game, for the club. The expectation, you're feeling the expectation levels have increased, and the club has to invest this summer in some capacity. Not to go mad, of course, but there needs to be a budget available to Ian Evatt, which we've been told apparently that the kind of is. So that's good news. But they need to invest, and we need to spend whatever money we do spend wisely, because I do feel that year-on-year progression that we're talking about needs to happen again.
How many signings then do you think you're going to need that improve the first 11 then?
Even though John Daddy Badvarson has just signed a 1-year contract extension today, and a lot of people see that he is the person to play alongside Dion Charles, I don't think his fitness record proves that he is. I think his ability as a footballer and his record, in fairness to him, has been pretty good considering his injuries. I don't think he's able to play week in, week out, Saturday Tuesday as Dion Charles' main partner. I think we need to bring in another forward, to be honest with you, who's able to play with Dion, be it a tenacious one, possibly like Dion, or be it someone like John Daddy Badvarson, who's got such a silky touch and brings people into play, not from a physical perspective, but his ability to be able to play the game as an attacker or as a forward. So yeah, we need another forward game for me. I think we need obviously another right wing back and of course a goalkeeper. So you're looking 3 or 4 players to improve that starting 11 for next season. That kind of answers your question, I think.
Yeah, no, that does certainly. Yeah, let's come on to the situation up top, because I think you alluded to it earlier that you're expecting Victor Adboyejo to have a big season next year, and what I liked about him at Burton Albion was that he's got that he's got a little bit of strength. He's not the tallest, but he's got that ability to receive the ball with the back to goal on the edge of the box, and then just swerve and have a sort of snapshot. And I think if he finds a bit of confidence, there's no reason why he can't hit 15, 20 goals, as well as being a good all-round centre forward.
Can I ask you a question with him? Because you'll probably know him. You'll know him better than me in terms of his history and stuff. For him to hit them levels, 15 goals plus, can he do that as a not a bit part striker, because you're playing Saturday Tuesday, but not as the main forward? Because obviously at Burton he was the main centre forward. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah, but then he's also going to be playing with Aaron Morley in the team.
better players
Burnley
around him.
and more. There's going to have really attacking quality wing backs, hopefully. So I think that you kind of balance those two things out as well. Maybe it might be more in the 10-15 category. I mean, it depends how the minutes end up getting divided, because there's variables like, is John Daddy Bodvarsson going to how many minutes is he going to play? There's also, I mean, are you expecting Dion Charles to be a mainstay?
Yeah, I think he'll perform as he did last season. To be honest, from a return point of view, I see no reason why he can't get the 20 goal target that he probably sets himself again. It's just like I just wanted to make. I want to make sure we go into the season with 3 or probably hopefully 4 forwards who can get 15 plus goals. So you've got
if 3-4-1-2 is the go-to formation, or so, which it is, then I think 4 strikers that you'd be happy to start at any time. I think that's got to be the priority.
Exactly that, and that's why I'm saying we definitely need one. So obviously we've got Dion, who scores 20 goals a season. Got Bodvarsson, who probably would have got 15 goals last season if he hadn't got injured, because he were on, I think he finished on 8 or 9. Then you've got Victor Adebayo, who's obviously proven that he can do it. And just one more, a lot of Bolton fans are saying getting Alfie May. There's been a few rumours. Obviously, I see no reason why he wouldn't come to Bolton Wanderers, to be fair. He will be the 4th striker.
I mean, I love the idea of Alfie May playing for an Ian Evatt side, because I think there's every chance that he could absolutely rip up the league. And I think he would be a great signing from a short-term perspective, but he's 29 and he's got a history of only ever playing in League One or in the lower leagues. So I don't necessarily know if Alfie May would be the kind of striker that you could bring into the Championship, which wouldn't be a problem if you felt like you had other really high potential strikers in the mix. But I don't necessarily feel like that's the profile of strikers that you've got at the moment. So would you maybe look at bringing in a younger centre forward that's a bit more high potential?
Well, they've looked at a lad called, I made a note of it earlier because I'm not as clued up on Irish centre forwards as I probably should be, but
like that you make notes, you're already in the good books for that, mate.
Lee Bonnis is an Irish striker who's currently playing, obviously over in Ireland, but he's recently got into the Northern Ireland squad. So obviously he's 23 years old, so that kind of mirrors up with what you're saying.
Yeah,
people will probably look at that and think, who's Lee Bonnis? Why aren't we signing Alfie May? From a fan's perspective, but when you look at what Owen Toll did last season from the Irish League, and what you've just said then about the Cheltenham lad being 29-year-old, then that kind of makes sense, doesn't it?
The only obviously I'm not overly familiar with Bonnis myself, but one sort of red flag I would have about recruiting from the Irish League, I think there's lots of fantastic potential in there, but sometimes it's difficult for players coming in from that league to have a good first season, because the calendar is a bit messed up, because you're signing players in season, so you've almost got to give them a bit of a rest period, or give them a bit of a holiday, if you like, before introducing them. So there'd be one that you'd kind of they'd be having their pre-season in August or September, say, and then actually you'd be expecting them to make more of an impact leading up towards the Christmas period, for instance.
Well, that makes sense, because we signed Owen Toll in January, and he hit the ground running.
Oh, yeah. Well, that makes sense. Yeah.
Exactly. So
okay. Well, we'll see. Yeah, certainly think that that's an important thing, because if you want to become a Championship-ready club, it's important that to balance recruiting for the here and now with recruiting players who could come into a squad that would be ready to sort of plug and play in the Championship, as opposed to going up into the Championship and then needing a whole build.
I know it's your podcast, and I know you're.
Oh no, absolutely. Yeah, this is what I want.
Questions, but I've got to ask you as well. Looking at our squad, and obviously your fantastic knowledge of the League One, the League Two, and the rest of the EFL, how many of our starting 11 or squad, if you want to refer to it, the squad, are able to kind of, or would you think are able to cut it in the Championship? If there was, for playing there?
That is an absolutely brilliant question. So I would say Ricardo Santos is a definite in that regard. I'm sure we'll be on the same page with that. I think there's a few that I would maybe wonder about in terms of Aaron Morley, obviously. I think he's got the potential. I really like Owen Toll, actually, and I think the fact that he's on the younger side definitely sort of nudges me towards him. I think that the slight concern that I would have would be that it seems to me that a lot of the squad is around the sort of 25 to 30 age bracket. And that doesn't mean that some of those players couldn't have a really good one-off season in the Championship with Ian Everts coaching. But in terms of continual growth, I would maybe have a question mark there. So I suppose that's two separate questions. But in terms of the players that I would have absolutely no doubts at all stepping up, it would probably be Ricardo Santos and Aaron Morley.
Yeah, no, interesting. You're probably right what you're saying about the age of the group and because of the contracts that they offer. I don't know whether that ties in with the fact that we're in League One or with what you're saying, in mind. But they do tend to be like 1-2 year contracts. They aren't. I think Ricardo Santos got given I might be wrong, but I'm pretty sure he got given a 3-year contract last summer.
I think it was 3 years, yeah.
But ordinarily they are quite short deals. So that kind of probably ties into what you just said, really.
Yeah, that's going to be. Do you think Bolton Wanderers are good? Because what we've seen under Ian Everts, say since January 2021, obviously, it's felt like the progress for Bolton Wanderers has been so smooth, where it just felt like the next natural objectives for the club have been achieved, because it was one promotion with an incredible run, 16 wins in 22, I think it was, 9th place finish in League One, which I know Ian Everett targeted promotion, but I think that was a great first season in League One. Then getting into the playoffs, I think next season you're within your rights to target the automatics, or certainly another top 6 finish. And it's just felt from the outside, Cole, very smooth. But given what we've been saying about the age profile of the squad, will the club be able to continue on this sort of smooth trajectory? Or do you think that there'll come a time where actually the club does need a bit of a rebuild, whether that is in League One or the Championship, just in terms of introducing a bit more high potential to the squad?
Yeah, I think what they probably would want, you'd suspect, for that trajectory to kind of go on a little bit like this when we're in the Championship. You think that when we do get back into the Championship, that the hierarchy would expect just to survive, I guess, initially. Then the following season from that build again, and that's when that that moment that you're referring to there will probably kick into gear, and we'll probably need to stay a little bit on the straight and narrow for a couple 2 or 3 years and find our feet a little bit in that division, because it's changed significantly since we were last in it not even that long ago. I think we would need to find our feet.
Yeah, for sure. And it's going to be very interesting to see whether the club does look at the long term in terms of recruitment and does sort of tweak to make sure that the squad is sort of rejuvenated a little bit with some fresh legs and fresh energy and players with potential to go on.
It's all about investment, though, isn't it? Yeah, that's the thing. It's all about investment. And, it's about investment, but also investing in the team with that model that we were talking about before, about your Brentfords and stuff, that they've kind of gone up like that because they've got your Ollie Watkins and sold them on, and set Said Berahino and sold them on, and not Berahino, sorry, the Ollies at West Ham who scored the other day for him in the Europa League. Can't forget his name. No, whatever. But Brentford have got a long list of players that they've had and they've sold.
Oh, sorry, Ben Rama. Sorry,
Ben Rama. Yeah, sorry, Ben Rama. So they've got players in and they've sold them. That's the model that we want, and we got to sell the players at the right time. So when we do get Aaron Morley's performing in the Championship, and somebody comes in with X amount of money, or a George Johnson who's ripping it up in the Championship and someone comes in, or even if we're in League One and somebody offers good money, then we need to sell and recycle that money and invest it again.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's how we'll grow the squads, I guess.
Yeah, for sure. Talk to me about the left wing back position then, Cole, because Declan John seemed to have put together a really good second half of last season, which maybe people didn't necessarily expect.
Yeah, well, you got to give him credit where it's due. I think obviously up to January he was kind of like the forgotten man, and it was a little bit of a shame because I think Bolton fans really like him. He's got a lot of support. I think it's because he offers so much from an attacking perspective. He does give me a few heart palpitations from a defensive perspective. I think there's areas of his game, I'm sure he'll probably admit himself, that he could improve defensively. And I do think sometimes teams do target him on the left side. But from an attacking point of view, he's fantastic and he offers so much. There's still, I don't know whether that I'm right with this or I'm kind of reading it wrong, but there's still a cloud over him, whether he stays with us or not. There's rumours of Wrexham in League Two might want him. Obviously, he's a Welsh lad. You can kind of see that happening as well. There was rumours before a while back about him going to, even when they were in the National League. So, yeah, if he left, would it be the end of the world? Probably not. I think we under contracts, we get a bit of money for him. Could we get somebody in who's got that attacking prowess, but also better defensively? Yeah. Jack Iredale, I think he's another one that you'd hope would have a better season than last. Obviously,
they loved him at Cambridge. He had a great 21-22 season with them.
Yeah, I can't help but think that Jack Iredale's been brought in as more of a left-sided centre half though than a left wing back for us.
Yeah,
especially with the recruitment of Randall Williams as well. Yeah, I just feel he's more him and George Johnson are kind of battling out for that left-sided defence position for me.
What did you think of George Johnson's season?
He would have, if he hadn't got injured against Charlton in, I think it was March or February, whatever time it was. I think for me it would have been player of the season. I think he was fantastic last season. He's just come on leaps and bounds defensively, physically. He reads the game well. He's wholehearted. He wears his heart on his sleeve. He's got his captain material. I can't say enough positive things about that lad. He's a fantastic defender. And even, I don't know what Scotland's defence is like, but I think he's got Scottish allegiances. I'd be all over him, to be honest with you.
He's one we could probably add to our list in terms of having no qualms with him stepping up to the championship if it came
he'd step up. Yeah, he'd step up definitely, and it wouldn't surprise me if a championship club comes in for him this summer and offers something for him. I think he's that impressive.
Yeah, well, hopefully Bolton Wanderers can keep hold of him. I wanted to talk to you about the makeup of the midfield because you've got obviously Aaron Morley had an outstanding, certainly 2/3 of last season.
Yeah.
Maybe he felt he dropped off a little bit towards the end. You've got Kyle Dempsey who provides the drive. You've got Josh Sheehan who provides the creativity, and you've got MJ Williams, who's more of a sort of solid operator. Do you feel like you need another one or two midfielders to come into that mix? Because you've got an interesting array of options there, haven't you?
Yeah, that was the position that I think we needed when I said to you earlier, like one of the 4 positions that we need to, start in improvements. Centre midfielder, the lad from Peterborough. Ollie Norwood.
Ollie Norburn, yeah.
There you go.
I think he had a great season at Peterborough because they've got a lot of competition in midfield. So I think for him to have the season that he did there was really impressive. And he's played in the Championship before as well.
Yeah.
Really energetic, hard-working midfielder as well.
And that's what we need, Gabe. That's exactly what we need: energetic, hard-working, box-to-box midfielder, really, who could possibly play with Dempsey in kind of a central / advanced midfield role as a 2, and then a Morley sitting kind of thing. that approach.
I think you want, for me, I think what you want is a blend of one sort of conductor, one dynamic box to box type, and one creator. I think you want to try and make sure that the makeup of which is why I sometimes question whether MJ Williams necessarily fits in. Maybe a few Bolton fans might disagree with me on this, but I feel he's quite solid. But I question whether he's necessarily creative enough.
I've always liked MJ. I think he does. Some Bolton fans aren't his biggest fan, which everyone's entitled to their opinions. Is fine, but I think he does offer that, tough tackling, solid midfielder that can still find a pass as well.
But with a back three, though, do you put a bit more emphasis on the midfielders needing to? Because I like the idea of MJ Williams playing in front of a back four, because that way there's a bit more space for a sort of a more orthodox destroyer who can sort of look after the ball. But I feel like if you're playing with a back three, you want your midfielders to either be super dynamic and box to box, very creative, or really technical in terms of switching play.
Yeah, maybe then that'll explain why he's not got into the team, MJ, towards the back end of last season, apart from when we were struggling for centre half and he filled in at centre back.
Okay, it's interesting.
Yeah, probably for that exact reason, I would suspect. I just think from time to time he's kind of played the 5-3 in the wing backs, but also had a sitter as well, and had two pushing on, be it impressive, be it Kieran Lee or obviously who's left, and whoever it is who's Carl Dempsey or whatever it is. So there is still a gap in our team for a holder who's obviously got that range of passing, even with the formation that we play.
Yeah, that certainly makes sense. I do need to attend to the alarm again. It's happened twice in this show.
We can't hear it, so.
Yeah, this doesn't normally happen very often. Anyway, it's sorted now. So midfield, maybe one or two more. That would certainly boost the squad as well, because that's going to be a really important thing. Because you look at Sheffield Wednesday getting to 96 points, Ipswich and Plymouth Argyle. They've all had the depth to be able to cope with absentees and in certain areas. So having two players for each position could be a real benefit next season.
Yeah, I mean, we kind of did really last season, but every team has its injuries, so it's you can't ever blame injuries, can you? Because I'm sure Ipswich, Sheffield Wednesday, and Plymouth had their injuries, but it just felt a little bit like Jack Hardale getting injured, losing George Johnson, Santos injury as well, Bob Varson being injured. Do you get what I mean? They were all kind of critical players for our squad as well, or our first 11. So yeah, I think we're a little bit unlucky last season, but yeah, we do, like I said to you before, we do need 7 or 8, I think, in the summer.
Yeah, that makes sense. Are there any, in terms of players who could possibly pad out the squad, what you tend to want is to be able to dip into the academy or the B team sometimes and sort of flesh things out a little bit, where, it comes down to sort of third choice options or players to fill the bench occasionally where needed. I know the club's introduced the B team as one of the things Sharon Britton did quite early on in her reign. Are there any talents in there that you're excited about to see a bit of in pre-season, perhaps?
Yeah, I mean, you've got Connor Carty. I think he's gone on loan to sort of an Irish club. I think he's quite sought after. Finlay Lockett, he's come through our academy. He's quite. He seems to be able to perform at that level and hasn't quite made that jump yet. There's a lad who called, I can't pronounce his surname, I think Nelson.
Benny,
I think he is. Yeah, he were at Norwich. Yeah, who's been in and around the first team squad, which is good to see.
He's a holding midfielder, isn't he?
He is, yeah. He is. So he could potentially make that step up. I think we might see him in a few games next season, all being well. And I think we've got a young lad who's come right through our academy called Max Conway, which I think the club's quite excited about. But yeah, there's a few, which is good. And they've recruited as well. I think they've recruited one already from Leeds' academy, who's not got a deal at Leeds, and he's a centre forward. I think he's scored like 9 or 10 goals in the Premier League 2 last season, I think it is.
Yeah,
a Leeds fan of mine, a friend of mine, was telling me. So he apparently he's pretty good. So it's all good stuff.
That sounds really hopeful. So I've got to make my 1 to 24 predictions for League One in a month's time, which I'm really looking forward to. I feel
I'm glad you're giving it a month, Gabe. You got to let.
Oh yeah.
Transfer window opens tomorrow, don't it? So you got to let that kind of play out, I guess.
Of course, yeah. A lot of transfer activity that can certainly influence my my thinking on that one. I feel like in terms of the main reasons to be massively in favour of Bolton Wanderers, I'm pretty familiar with, because I think I've got a lot of faith in the people at the club and the progress that's been made, and I feel quite happy to back that, really, if the recruitment goes to plan. But I wanted to ask you: are there any reasons to maybe doubt Bolton Wanderers ahead of next season?
I think when a question like this gets asked, you got to kind of like take them glasses off, the rose tinted glasses or the white tinted glasses, and kind of remove yourself as a fan from the situation.
It's a red rose, so we'll call it the rose tinted.
Yeah, red rose. Yeah. Any reasons not to be optimistic? Well, yeah. I mean, for me, that even as a attacker, as when I used to play football, even though I'm going to say this, I probably disagree. I'm probably arguing with myself, but the most important position on the pitch is a goalkeeper. And James Trafford was such an integral part of our team last season, and the 6 months before that. We have to get his replacement right.
Loan market
get his replacement right, then there's no reason not to be optimistic about us. But if we don't, then that could be a massive issue.
I think the one trend that we've seen in the EFL in recent years is that young goalkeepers on loan have actually done really well, and the reason I think is because so many clubs have instinctively wanted an experienced goalkeeper, because the sort of standard line of logic is you don't run much as a goalkeeper, so therefore age isn't as much of an issue, so we'd rather have the experience and have players who are proven. And actually that means that there's been goalkeepers like Carl Rushworth, I think James Beadle actually at Brighton, who had a good loan spell at Crewe last season. I think Bolton might be interested in a loan for him, not 100% sure on that, but
say that name again, sorry.
James Beadle
from Brighton.
Brighton, yeah, he's on loan at Crewe.
Yeah, he's one of the rumoured players, and a goalkeeper called Toby Savin from Accrington.
Yeah, I'm less sold on Toby Savin because he didn't have a great loan spell at Stevenage, so I'd be surprised if he brought him in as first choice. But Beadle could be another one of those high potential goalkeepers, a bit like Carl Rushworth, who I mentioned before, and James Trafford, of course.
Yeah.
And I think because clubs often favour experience in goal, it actually means that there's goalkeepers who end up going to clubs that probably ability-wise they're actually a lot better than, but they kind of fall down the sort of list, if you like, for a lot of clubs because they want that experience. So that's a market I think Bolton have done really well out of.
Yeah, as much as I do want us to go in for the youthful goalkeeper again, because obviously it worked, and providing that they get that right, then happy days. But I would like an experienced goalkeeper as well to compete for that position, like
pair of hands.
Well, just somebody with that know-how really in that league, and he's got that experience.
If I can just jump in on there, actually, it reminds me of the 2021 season where you brought in Billy Crellin, who was the England under-20s goalkeeper, the really exciting talent, and everyone thought, wow, he could have an amazing season. And then I think he had a bit of a tricky first half of the season, and a bit of a run-in with Ian Everton, all that kind of thing. And then Matt Giltz came in. Matt Giltz wasn't an outstanding goalkeeper, but he just had that bit of experience, that bit of know-how, and that bit of reliability, which you kind of needed. So I actually think that's a really good point as well.
I'd like Connor Ripley, for example, perfect as a number two, or even just as a number one, or
competition.
Competition, exactly. Obviously, he had a really good season last season with Morecambe. I think he can play a bit as well. I think he's not the best with his feet. You'll know better than me, but I think he can play a little bit as well. Fantastic shot stopper. So I think him and the youthful that lad from Crewe, who's the Brighton lad, is on loan at Crewe, for example. With him, with Rickley, it'd be ideal. But we've got to get the recruitment right from the goalkeeping position.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, really exciting summer ahead, and an important one as well. But the club's made so many strides over the last 2 or 3 years. It's hard not to feel anything other than a huge amount of faith in Sharon Britton, Ian Everton, and everybody associated.
Well, yeah, I mean, we're lucky, aren't we? Like, you know, with all the turmoil that goes on in the lower leagues from an ownership perspective,
which you know all too well about.
Exactly that, yeah. And we're lucky. We're lucky to have Sharon Britton and the leadership team that she's put together. So long may that continue.
Lucky to have you on the podcast as well, Carl. Been such a pleasure, mate. Any plans what are your plans for the Fanzone pod next season?
Yeah, so we're really hoping to take it to that next level. Really, we're hoping to obviously move it in terms of a bit more visual. I think in terms of you know, all the attractive stuff that you like to see on social media and all that type of stuff. We're kind of training one another to kind of develop, you know, images and all that type of stuff. So it looks nice, and also we're considering maybe doing the odd live after the game kind of match reaction type thing. So take it to that kind of next level, not just a podcast, but you know, live reaction. I think the live thing is what we kind of pride ourselves on. We're live every Sunday, or the day after every game, should I say? So yeah, exciting stuff. So it's a hobby and we enjoy it. So yeah,
absolutely.
Looking forward to the season.
Brilliant stuff. Hopefully have you on the EFL debate many times to come over the next year and beyond. So thanks for joining us, Cole. This has been EFL Debate, the summer deep dive on Bolton Wanderers. Thanks to you for watching at home, and we'll see you again very soon.